Hi, welcome to this Corbettmaths video. In this video, we're going to look at the video solutions to the fractions of amounts practice questions. If you need any extra help on finding fractions of amounts, if you go to corbettmaths.com/contents and scroll down to video number 137, there's a video tutorial there on finding fractions of amounts. Alternatively, you could scan this QR code. But in this video, we're going to focus on the video solutions to the practice questions, so let's get started. Okay, question number one. So question number one, it's a non-calculator question and we've been asked to work out 3/4 of 36. So if we want to work out 3/4 of 36, we're going to divide it by 4 to find a quarter, and then we're going to times by 3. So we divide by the bottom and times by the top. So we're going to take our 36 and we're going to divide it by 4, and 36 divided by 4 is 9 because 4 times 9 is 36. So 36 divided by 4 is 9. So we've divided by the bottom, so a quarter of 36 is 9. Now we're going to times by the top. So we're going to do 9 times 3. And 9 times 3 is 27. So that means that 3/4 of 36 is 27. So our answer is 27. Okay, let's have a look at our next question, question number 2. So question number 2 says, work out a third of 24. So if we want to find a third of 24, we just divide it by 3. Because if you want to find a third of something, you just divide by 3. So we're going to do 24 divided by 3. And remember, we divide by the bottom and times by the top. So we're going to divide by 3, and there's no point times by 1, so we're just going to divide by 3. So 24 divided by 3 would be 8, because 3 times 8 is 24. So 24 divided by 3 is 8, so that means that a third of 24 is 8. And that's it, so our answer is 8. Okay, let's have a look at our next question, question number 3. So question number 3 says, work out 2/5 of 35 days. So to find 2/5 of a number, we divide by 5 and then times by 2. So we divide by the bottom and times by the top. So let's do 35 divided by 5, and 35 divided by 5 is 7, because 5 times 7 is 35. So a fifth of 35 days is 7. Now we want 2/5, so we're going to multiply by 2. So 7 multiplied by 2 is equal to 14. So that means that 2/5 of 35 days would be 14 days. So 14 days. That's our answer. Okay, let's have a look at our next question, question number 4. So question number 4 says, calculate 4/9 of 72 kilograms. So we want to work out 4/9, so we're going to divide by 9 and then multiply by 4. So let's take 72 and divide by 9, divided by the bottom. So 72 divided by 9 is 8, because 9 times 8 is 72. So we've worked out 1/9 of 72 kilograms, that would be 8 kilograms. Well, we want 4/9, so we're going to multiply by 4. So we're going to do 8 multiplied by 4. And 8 multiplied by 4 is 32. So the answer is 32 kilograms. And that's it. Okay, let's have a look at our next question. So our next question, question number 5. Question number 5 says, work out 4/7 of 2 weeks and to give our answer in days. So we want to work out 4/7 of 2 weeks. Now, because we're to give our answer in days, let's change our 2 weeks into days. So 1 week is 7 days. So 1 week is equal to 7 days. So 7 days in a week. So if we had 2 weeks, that would be 14 days. So 2 weeks is equal to 14 days. So instead of working out 4/7 of 2 weeks, we're going to work out 4/7 of 14 days, because 2 weeks is 14 days. So let's work out what 4/7 of 14 days would be. So we're going to divide by the bottom. So we're going to take 14 and divide by 7. And 14 divided by 7 is equal to 2. And then we're going to multiply by the top. So we're going to do 2 multiplied by 4. And 2 times 4 is equal to 8. So that means that 4/7 of 14 days would be 8 days. So the answer is 8 days, because 4/7 of 2 weeks is 8 days. So the answer is 8 days. Okay, let's have a look at our next question, question number 6. So question number 6 says, calculate 5/8 of 14 kilograms. So we want to work out 5/8 of 14 kilograms. So we're going to divide by the bottom, divide by the denominator. So we're going to do 14 divided by 8. So 14 divided by 8. And it's a calculator question, so that's great. So 14 divided by 8 would be 1.75 kilograms. Then we're going to multiply by the numerator, multiply by the top. So we're going to take our 1.75 and we're going to multiply that by 5. And 1.75 multiplied by 5 would be equal to 8.75. So our answer is 8.75 kilograms. And that's it. So 5/8 of 14 kilograms is 8.75 kilograms. Okay, let's have a look at our next question, question number 7. So question number 7 says, James earns £800 a month. So he earns £800 a month and he spends a quarter of that money on his rent, and he spends 2/5 of the money on food and bills, and we're asked how much money does he have left. So let's start off with the rent. So for the rent, we know that he spends a quarter of the money on rent. So if we work out a quarter of £800, that's how much he spends in rent. And to work out a quarter of something, you just divide it by 4. So we're going to do 800 divided by 4. And 800 divided by 4, well, 8 divided by 4 is 2. So 800 divided by 4 would be 200. So he spends £200 on rent. So that's how much he spends on his rent. And he spends 2/5 of the money on food and bills. So let's focus on the food and bills. So he spends 2/5 of the money. Now he's got £800, so we need to work out 2/5 of £800. So to do that, we're going to divide by the bottom and times by the top. So we're going to take the £800 and divide it by 5 to find a fifth of £800, and then we're going to multiply by 2 to find 2/5. So let's take the £800 and divide it by 5. Now, because this is a non-calculator question, I'm going to use the bus shelter method, so I'm going to do 800 divided by 5. So how many 5s go into 8? That's 1, remainder 3. How many 5s go into 30? That's 6. And how many 5s go into 0? That's 0. So a fifth of £800 would be £160. Now we want 2/5, so we're going to take the £160 and multiply by 2. And that's equal to, well, 16 times 2 is 32. So 160 times 2 would be 320. So that means he spends £320 on the food and bills. And the question says, how much money does he have left? So altogether, he spends £320 on the food and bills plus £200 on the rent. So he spends £520 in total. And we know that he has £800 a month. He earns £800 a month. So if we do 800 subtract 520, that'll be how much money James has left. So 0 take away 0 is 0. Then we've got 0 take away 2. So let's borrow. So let's cross off the 8, call that 7 and a 10. 10 take away 2 is 8. And 7 take away 5 is 2. So that means that he has got £280 left. So how much money does James have left after spending a quarter of the money on rent and 2/5 of the money on bills? The answer would be £280. So let's write that down. £280. And that's it. Okay, let's have a look at our next question. So question number 8. Question number 8 says, Mrs. Johnson set 6 students a test. So she's given 6 students a test, and the test has got 20 questions. And Mrs. Johnson says to pass, you'll need to answer 3/4 of the questions correctly. And the results were, and we've got the results for each of the students in the class, and we've been asked to work out which students passed the test. So Mrs. Johnson said you need to answer 3/4 of the questions correctly. Now there's 20 questions, so let's work out what 3/4 of 20 is. So let's work out 3/4 of 20. So to find 3/4 of 20, we're going to divide by the bottom and times by the top. So we're going to divide 20 by 4. So 20 divided by 4 is equal to 5. That's a quarter of 20. Then we're going to times by the top. So 5 times 3 is equal to 15. So that means to pass the test, the students need to get 15 questions correct or more. So they need to answer at least 15 questions correctly. So now, if we look at the results, we know that Alan answered 14 correctly. Now, Mrs. Johnson says to pass the test, they need 15 questions answered correctly. So he doesn't pass the test, he fails. Barry gets 16, so he passes. That's 15 or more, so he passes. Carl gets 13 correct, so that's a fail. He doesn't get 15 correct. Donna gets 19 correct, so she passes. Emma gets 20 correct, all 20 questions, so she passes. And Fiona only gets 10 questions correct, so she needs 15 to pass, so she fails. So the question says, which students pass the test? That's going to be Barry, Donna, and Emma. So let's write that down. Barry, Donna, and Emma. And that's it. Okay, let's have a look at our next question, question number 9. So question number 9, we've been asked which is larger, a half of 280 or 3/8 of 400, and we've been asked to show our working. So let's start off with the half of 280 to begin with. So let's work out a half of 280. And let's work out what that is. So to find half of something, we just divide by 2. And it's a non-calculator question. So let's take our 280 and use the bus shelter method. And we'll say how many 2's go into 2? 1. How many 2's go into 8? That's 4, because 4 times 2 is 8. And how many 2's go into 0? 0. So a half of 280 would be 140. So a half of 280 is 140. So we now know what a half of 280 is. Let's work out what 3/8 of 400 would be. So to find 3/8 of 400, 3/8 of 400, we're going to divide by the bottom and times by the top. So we're going to take the 400 and divide it by 8 to begin with, to find an eighth of it, and then we're going to times by the top. So let's do 400 divided by 8 and see what that is. So how many 8's go into 4? 0, remainder 4. How many 8's go into 40? Well, there's going to be 5 times 8 is 40, so that's 5. And then how many 8's go into 0? 0. So 400 divided by 8 is equal to 50. So we've divided by the bottom. Now we need to times by the top. So let's do 50 multiplied by 3. And 50 multiplied by 3 is 150, because 3 50s, that's 50, 100, 150. So 3/8 of 400 is 150. And the question says which is larger, half of 280 or 3/8 of 400? Well, we can see that 3/8 of 400 is larger. That's equal to 150 as opposed to 140 for half of 280. So which is larger, 3/8 of 400? And that's it. Okay, let's have a look at our next question, question number 10. So question number 10 says, Joanne has got 300 sweets and she gives half of the sweets to Erin. Joanne then gives a third of the remaining sweets to William. How many sweets does Joanne have left? So first of all, she starts off with 300 sweets and she gives half of those to Erin. So let's work out how many sweets she gives to Erin. So if we have 300, and to find a half of a number, we divide by 2. So we're going to do 300 divided by 2. And half of 300 is 150. And if you're not sure on that, you can use your bus shelter method. 300 divided by 2. 2 goes into 3 once, remainder 1. 2 goes into 10 5 times, and 2 goes into 0, 0. So 300 divided by 2 is 150. So Joanne gives half of the sweets to Erin, so she gives Erin 150 sweets. So she gives Erin 150 sweets. She then gives a third of the remaining sweets to William. So she had 300 and she gives 150 away. And when we do 300, take away 150, that means she's got 150 sweets left. And she gives a third of the remaining sweets to William. So she gives a third of this number of sweets to William. She gives a third of 150 to William. So if we take our 150, and to get a third of something, you divide by 3. So we're going to do 150 divided by 3. And 150 divided by 3, well, 15 divided by 3 is 5. So 150 divided by 3 would be 50. So she's going to give 50 sweets to William. And the question says, how many sweets does she have left? Well, she had 150. She's given 50 away to William. So if we do 150, take away 50, that'll tell us how many sweets Joanne has left. And 150 take away 50 is equal to 100. So that means that Joanne will have 100 sweets left, and that's it. Okay, let's have a look at our next question, question number 11. So question number 11 says, Hannah's got $900 and she spends a third of the money on books and 2/5 of the money on presents. What fraction of the $900 does she have left? So let's first of all find out how much money she has left. So she had $900 to begin with, so let's focus on the books. So for the books, she had $900 and she spends a third of it in books. So to get a third of something, you divide by 3. So 900 divided by 3. Now 9 divided by 3 is 3. So 900 divided by 3 would be 300. That means she spends $300 on books. Now, in terms of the presents, Hannah spends 2/5 of the money on presents. So we need to work out 2/5 of $900. So we're going to divide by the bottom and times by the top. So we're going to take the $900 and we're going to divide it by 5 to find a fifth of $900. We'll get that amount and then we'll multiply it by the top. So we'll then times by 2. So let's do 900 divided by 5. So 900 divided by 5. 5 goes into 9 once, remainder 4. 5 goes into 40 8 times, and 5 goes into 0 0 times. So a fifth of 900 is $180. So that's $180. And that's 1/5, but we divided by the bottom. We now need to times by the top. So we're going to take the 180 and we're going to multiply by 2. And 180 multiplied by 2, well, 18 times 2 is 36. So 180 multiplied by 2 would be 360. Alternatively, you could use the column method of multiplication there if you wanted to. So that means that she spends $360 on presents. So Hannah spends $300 on books and $360 on presents. So let's take them away from the $900 to see how much money she's got left. So let's work how much money she spent altogether. So 300 plus 360 is equal to $660. That's how much money she spends. And if we take 900 and take our 660 away from it, that'll tell us how much money Hannah has left. So 0 take away 0 is 0. 0 take away 6, let's borrow. So cross off the 9, call that an 8, and that's now 10. 10 take away 6 is 4, and 8 take away 6 is 2. That means that Hannah's got $240 left. Now the question didn't ask us how much money she has left. The question asked us what fraction of the $900 does she have left. So that means, well, because she had $900 to begin with, so the denominator would be 900, and then she's got $240 left, so the fraction of the money she's got left is 240 900ths. Now let's cancel this down. These numbers are both divisible by 10, so dividing both the numerator and denominator by 10 would give us 24 90ths. These two numbers are both even, so let's divide by 2. That'll be 12 45ths. 12 and 45, they're both divisible by 3, so let's divide both of those by 3. 12 divided by 3 is 4, and 45 divided by 3 would be 15, and that's 4/15, and that can't be cancelled down any further, so the answer is 4/15, 4/15, and that's it. So what fraction of the money did she have left? The answer is 4/15. Okay, let's have a look at our next question. Okay, let's have a look at our next question, question number 12. So question number 12 says, a pair of jeans normally costs £48, and in the sales there is a quarter off. Work out how much the jeans are in the sales. So in the sale, there's a quarter off the normal price. So let's work out a quarter off £48 and then take that away to see how much the price would be. So well, let's take the £48 and to find a quarter of something, we divide by 4. So let's divide by 4. And 48 divided by 4 is 12. So that's £12. So that means that she's saving £12 because there's a quarter off the normal price. So we're going to take £12 away from the normal price. So the normal price was £48. we're taking away £12, and 48 take away 12, well, taking away 10 would be 38, and then another 2 would be 36. So that means the jeans would cost £36, and that's it. So how much are the jeans in the sales? The answer is £36, and that's it. Okay, let's have a look at our next question. So question number 13. Question number 13 says, work out 5/7 of 168. So this is a non-calculator question, and to work out 5/7 of a number, we'll divide by 7 and then multiply by 5, dividing by the bottom and multiplying by the top. So 180 divided by 7, let's do that to begin with to work out a 7th of 180. So 7 into 1, that doesn't go, so that's 0, remainder 1. How many 7s go into 16? Well, 7, 14, that'll be 2 7s, remainder 2. And how many 7s go into 28? That's 4. So a 7th of 168 is 24. Now we want 5/7, so we now need to multiply by the numerator. So we're going to do 24 multiplied by 5. So 5 times 4 is 20, so put our 0 down and carry our 2. And 5 times 2 is 10, plus 2 is 12. So that means that 5/7 of 168 would be 120. So the answer is 120, and that's it. Okay, let's have a look at our next question, question number 14. So question number 14 says, work out 4/3 of 288. Now this question is a bit different than the ones we've done so far because this is a top-heavy fraction, because it's 4/3 of something. So whenever you're working out a top-heavy fraction of an amount, it's actually going to be greater than what you started with. Whenever we work out 4/3 of 288, it's going to be greater than 288. But the technique's the same. We're going to take our 288, we'll divide by the bottom and times by the top. So we're going to do 288 divided by 3. So 3 into 2 doesn't go. So that's 0, remainder 2. How many 3's go into 28? That's going to be 9. 9 times 3 is 27, so it's going to be 9, remainder 1. And how many 3's go into 18? That's going to be 6. So it means 1/3 of 288 is 96. So we've divided by the bottom. We now need to times by the top. So 96 multiplied by 4. 4 times 6 is 24, so let's put our 4 down and carry our 2. And 4 times 9 is 36, plus 2 is 38. So that means that 4/3 of 288 is 384. So the answer is 384, and that's it. Okay, let's have a look at our next question, question number 15. So question number 15 says, a shop has got 24 bottles of lemonade and 2/3 of the bottles contain 500 mils. So that's 500 millilitres. They may be the smaller bottles of lemonade. And then the rest of the bottles contain 2 litres, so perhaps the larger bottles of lemonade. And the question says, how much lemonade does the shop have in total? So we need to work out how much lemonade the shop's got in total. So what I'm going to do first of all is work out how many 500 millilitre bottles there are and how many 2 litre bottles there are, and then work out how much lemonade are in those in total. So let's start off with the 500 millilitre bottles, because we're told 2/3 of the bottles contain 500 millilitres. And there's 24 bottles, so we need to work out 2/3 of 24. So to work out 2/3 of 24, we're going to divide by the bottom and times by the top. So let's take 24 and divide it by the bottom, which is 3. So 24 divided by 3 is 8. And then multiply by the top, multiply by the numerator, 8 multiplied by 2 is equal to 16. So that means there's 16 500 millilitre bottles, 500 millilitre bottles. And then the rest of the bottles contain 2 litres. So we can work this out in 2 different ways. We could say, well, there's 24 bottles, so 24. Take away the 16 that we know contain 500 millilitres, so 24 take away 16, and that's equal to 8. So that means there's 8 2-litre bottles, so 8 2-litre bottles. Another way we could have done that was, well, if 2/3 of them contain 500 millilitres, the rest, which is 1/3, contain 2 litres, and 1/3 of 24 is 8 as well. Okay, so we now know there's 16 bottles that contain 500 millilitres, and there's 8 bottles that contain 2 litres. Let's work out how much lemonade that is in total. With the 2-litre bottles, there's 8 of them and they contain 2 litres each. So if we do 8 multiplied by 2, that'll tell us how many litres there are altogether. So 8 multiplied by 2 is equal to 16. So in those 2-litre bottles, there's 16 litres of lemonade altogether. So that means there's 16 litres in those 2-litre bottles in total. Now in terms of the 500 millilitre bottles, there's a few different ways in which we can work out how many litres that is in total. One way is to consider that 500 millilitres is half a litre, so we've got 16 halves. So we've got 16 multiplied by half a litre. So that's one way we could look at it. And 16 halves, well, half of 16 is 8. So 16 halves would be 8. If we had 16 halves and you put them all together, that'd be 8. So that's 8 litres. So that's one way we could work out how much lemonade is in the 500 millilitre bottles. Or another way to do it is to do multiplication. Just do 16 times 500 millilitres. So take our 500 millilitres and multiply that by 16. Or you could do 16 multiplied by 500. It's up to you. So let's multiply 500 by 16. 6 times 0 is 0. 6 times 0 is 0, and 6 times 5 is 30. So we've multiplied 500 by 6 and got 3,000. Now we need to multiply 500 by 10, so put our 0 down. 1 times 0 is 0, 1 times 0 is 0, and 1 times 5 is 5. So that's 5,000 millilitres, and adding them together, 0, 0, 0, and 8. So that'll be 8,000 millilitres, which is 8 litres. And that's it. So there's a few different ways you can work out how much lemonade is in those 500 millilitre bottles, but altogether there'd be 8 litres. So we've now worked out how much lemonade is in the 2 litre bottles and how much lemonade is in the 500 millilitre bottles. So to work out how much lemonade the shop's got in total, we just need to add these numbers together. There are 16 litres and our 8 litres, and 16 plus 8 is equal to 24. So that means that altogether the shop's got 24 litres of lemonade, so 24 litres. And that's it. So the answer is 24 litres, and that's it. Okay, let's have a look at our next question, question number 16. So in question number 16, we're told in January a baby elephant weighs 180 kilograms, and by March the weight of the baby elephant has increased by 3/8. Work out the weight of the baby elephant in March. So we need to increase the weight of the baby elephant by 3/8. So if we can work out 3/8 off 180 kilograms, we can add that on to find out how heavy the baby elephant is in March. So let's do that. And it's a calculator question, so to work out 3/8 of 180, we'll divide by the bottom and times by the top. So we're going to do 180 divided by the bottom, so divided by 8, that's equal to 22.5 kilograms. But we want to find 3/8, so we now need to multiply by the top. So 22.5 multiplied by 3 is equal to 67.5 kilograms. So we've now worked out what 3/8 of 180 kilograms is. But remember, the weight of the elephant had increased by 3/8, so we need to add that on to what it was to begin with. So we're going to do 180 plus 67.5, and that would tell us how heavy the baby elephant is. So 180 plus 67.5 is equal to 247.5 kilograms. So 247.5 kilograms. So let's write that down. 247.5 kilograms. And that's it. Okay, let's have a look at our next question, question number 17. So question number 17 says, Bill is 80 years old and his son Max is 5/8 of his age and his granddaughter Jane is 1/5 of his age. How many years older than Jane is Max? So let's work out how old his son is, Max, and how old his granddaughter is, Jane, and then work out the difference between their ages. So let's start off with Max. So Max is 5/8 of his age. So if we work out 5/8 of 80, that'll be how old Max is. So to find 5/8 of a number, we divide it by 8 and multiply by 5. So we're going to take 80 and we're going to divide it by the bottom, 8, and 80 divided by 8 is 10. And then we're going to multiply by the top, so we're going to do 10 multiplied by 5 is equal to 50. So that means that Max is 50 years old. So Max is 50. And in terms of his granddaughter, Jane, she's 1/5 of his age. So if we do 80 divided by 5, that'll be 1/5 of 80. So we want to work out 1/5 of 80. And to work out 1/5 of 80, we just divide it by 5. So let's do 80 divided by 5. So 5 goes into 8 once, remainder 3, and 5 goes into 30 6 times. So that means that Jane is 16 years old. And the question says, how many years older than Jane is Max? Well, we're just going to do 50 take away 16. And if we do 50 take away 16, that'll tell us the difference between their ages. It'll tell us how many years older Max is than Jane. So 0 take away 6, let's borrow. So it's a 4 and a 10. 10 take away 6 is 4, and 4 take away 1 is 3. So that means that Max is 34 years older than Jane. So let's write that down, 34 years. Okay, let's look at our next question. It says, Georgie works 5 hours each week and she earns £15 an hour. And she saves 1/3 of her earnings each week. How many weeks does it take Georgie to save £200? So let's find out how much money Georgie earns each week. So she works 5 hours and she's paid £15 an hour. So if we do 5 times 15, we'll work out how much money Georgie's paid each week. So let's do 15 multiplied by 5. So 5 times 5 is 25. So let's put our 5 down, carry our 2. And 5 times 1 is 5, plus 2 is 7. So that means that every single week she earns £75. And we're told she saves 1/3 of her earnings each week. So we need to work out 1/3 of £75, so 1/3 of £75. And let's see what that is. And to find 1/3 of £75, we're just going to divide it by 3. So let's take 75 and divide it by 3. So 3 goes into 7 twice, remainder 1. And 3 goes into 15 5 times. So that means that 1/3 of £75 is £25. So that means that Georgie saves £25 every single week. And the question says, how many weeks does it take Georgie to save £200? So I know it's going to be 8 weeks here because I know that 4 weeks would be £100. So 8 weeks would be £200. But let's just check that. £25, £50, £75, £100. So over 4 weeks, she'll save £100, £125, £150, £175, and £200. So it'll take 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 weeks to save £200. So the answer is 8 weeks. Okay, let's have a look at our next question, question number 19. So Gregory received £2,400 and he gave a third of it to his favourite charity and spent a fifth of it on a new violin. What fraction of his money is left? So let's find out how much money Gregory gave to the charity and how much money Gregory spent on the violin. So let's start off with the charity. So charity. He gave a third of the money to his favourite charity. So to find a third of a number, you divide it by 3. So let's take 2,400 and divide by 3. And 2,400 divided by 3, well, 24 divided by 3 is 8, so 2,400 divided by 3 would be 800. So that means he gives £800 of the money to charity. So that's how much he gives to charity. Now in terms of the violin, so the violin, he spends a fifth of the money on a violin. So to find a fifth of a number, you divide by 5. So let's take 2,400 and let's divide by 5. So how many 5s go into 2? 0, remainder 2. How many 5s go into 24? Well, it's going to be 4, remainder 4, so 4, remainder 4. How many 5s go into 40? That's going to be 8. And how many 5s go into 0? 0. So that means he spends £480 on a new violin. So Gregory gave £800 to charity and he spent £480 on a new violin. And the question said, what fraction of his money is left? So let's find out how much money he's got left. So let's add together the 800 and 480. That'll tell us how much money he's spent in total. So 800 plus 480. So 0 plus 0 is 0, 0 plus 8 is 8, and 8 plus 4 is 12. So he spent £1,280, and if we take that away from the £2,400 that he had, that'll tell us how much money he's got left, and then we can work out what fraction he had left. So 0 take away 0, 0, 0 take away 8, let's borrow, so that's now a 3 and a 10. 10 take away 8 is 2, 3 take away 2 is 1, and 2 take away 1 is 1. So that means he's got £1,120 left. Now the question said what fraction of his money is left. So he had 2,400 and he's got £1,120 left. So let's write that as a fraction. 1,120 over 2,400. So let's cancel this down. So both the numerator and the denominator are divisible by 10. So let's divide both of them by 10. So that'll be 112 over 240. Now let's divide both of those numbers by 2. That's going to be 120 on the denominator, and half of 112 will be 56. They're both even again, so let's divide by 2 again, equals 28 over 60. They're both divisible by 2, so let's divide by 2 again. That's going to be 14 over 30, or 14 thirtieths. And again, they're divisible by 2, so dividing both of those by 2 would be 7 over 15. So he's got 7/15 of his money left. So the question said, what fraction of his money is left? 7/15. Okay, let's have a look at our next question. Okay, let's have a look at our next question, question number 20, and this is a calculator question. And the question says a static caravan normally costs £58,995 and the price is reduced by a fifth in the sale. Work out the sale price of the static caravan. So the price is reduced by a fifth. So let's work out a fifth of 58,995 and see how much money is saved, and then take that away to see how much the static caravan will cost in the sale. So this is a calculator question. So we can do 58,995, and to find a fifth of a number, we divide it by 5. So divided by 5, and that's equal to £11,799. So that's how much the price is reduced by. So now let's take it away to see how much the caravan will cost in the sale. So £58,995 subtract £11,799 is equal to £47,196. So that means the static caravan in the sale will cost £47,196. And that's it. Okay, let's have a look at our next question, question number 21. Okay, let's have a look at our next question, question number 21. So question number 21 says the attendance from United versus Trowbridge Rovers was 8,701. And of this crowd, 5/7 were adults. Calculate how many children were in the crowd. Now I can think of two different ways we can approach this question. One way is to work out how many adults there were. So work out 5/7. So this 5/7 of the crowd are adults. So we could work out 5/7 of 8,701, and that would tell us how many adults there are. And then take that away from 8,701 to see how many children are in the crowd. So that's one way we could do it. Alternatively, if we know that 5/7 are adults, the rest must be children, and that'll be 2/7. So we could just work out 2/7 of this number. I'm actually going to show you both approaches now. So this is a calculator question. So let's start by finding out how many adults there are. So we've got 8,701, and let's work out 5/7 of that number, 5/7. So we'll divide by the bottom and times by the top. So that's equal to 8,701 divided by 7 is equal to 1,243. So that's a seventh of 8,701. Now we're going to multiply by 5. We need to multiply by the top. So 1,243 multiplied by 5. And whenever we multiply that by 5, we get an answer of 6,215. So the 6,215 adults, that's how many adults there are in the crowd. And then we can just take that away from the total crowd to work out how many children there are. So 8,701 take away 6,215 is equal to 2,486. So that means there's 2,486 children in the crowd. So that's one way we could approach that question. Another way would have been to say, well, if the 5/7 of the crowd are adults, the rest must be children. So that means that 2/7 of the crowd are children. So we could work out 2/7 of 8,701, and to do that we'll divide by the bottom and times by the top. So we'll take the 8,701 and divide by 7, and on our calculator we would do that and we would get 1,243. Then we would multiply by the top, so we take our 1,243 and multiply by 2, and that's equal to 2,486, and that means there's 2,486 children in the crowd. Okay, let's have a look at our next question, question number 22. So question number 22 says, a jar of coffee used to contain 520 grams. The new packet contains 1/5 less, so they're shrinking the size of the packet. And we've been asked to work out how much the new packet contains. So the new packet contains 1/5 less. So if we can work out 1/5 of 520 grams, we can then take that away to see what's left, so how much is in the new packet. So let's work out 1/5 of 520 grams. And to work out 1/5 of a number, we divide by 5. So let's take our 520 and divide by 5. So how many 5s go into 5? That's 1. How many 5s go into 2? That's 0, remainder 2. And how many 5s go into 20? That's 4. So that means that 1/5 of 520 grams would be 104 grams. Now, the new packet contains 1/5 less, so we just need to take that away from what the packet used to contain, or the jar used to contain, and that'll tell us how much is in the new packet. So 520 take away 104, that's equal to 416. So that means there's 416 grams in the new packet, or in the new jar, and that's it. Okay, let's have a look at our next question, question number 23. So now question number 23 says, in February, 1,400 trains arrived at a train station and 3/10 of the trains were late. So 3/10 of the trains were late. And the question says, work out how many trains were not late. So there's two different ways we can do this question. It's a bit like question number 21, actually, where we looked at the number of adults and children in a crowd. So in this question, what we could do is we could work out how many trains were late. So we could work out 3/10 of 1,400. And then to find how many trains were not late, we would just take that away from 1,400, and that would tell us then how many trains were not late. Alternatively, we could say, well, if 3/10 of the trains were late, the rest, which is 7/10, were not late. So we could just work out 7/10 of 1,400. And let's have a look at both approaches now. So first of all, let's consider the first approach, which is to work out how many trains were late. So let's work out 3/10 of 1,400. And that's equal to, well, we'll divide by the bottom and times by the top. So let's take our 1,400 and divide by 10, and that's equal to 140. So we've divided by the bottom, now let's multiply by the top. So let's take our 140 and multiply by 3. 3 times 0 is 0. 3 times 4 is 12, so put our 2 down and carry 1, and 3 times 1 is 3 plus 1 is 4. So that means that 420 trains were late, so 3/10 of 1,400 is 420, and that means that 420 trains were late. Now we could just take that away from 1,400, and that tells us how many trains were not late. So 1,400 subtract 420 is equal to, so 0 take away 0 is 0, 0 take away 2, well that's borrow, so that's a 3 and a 10, 10 take away 2 is 8, and then we've got borrowing again, 13 take away 4 is 9. So that means that 980 trains were not late. So that's one way we could have done that question. Another way again would have been to consider, well, how many trains were not late? Well, if 3/10 of the trains were late, that means the rest, which is 7/10, were not late. So if we could just work out 7/10 of 1,400, that'll also be the answer. So let's take our 1,400 and divide by the bottom, which is 10, and that's equal to 140. And then let's multiply by the top. So 140 multiplied by 7. So 7 times 0 is 0, 7 times 4 is 28, so put our 8 down, carry our 2, and 7 times 1 is 7, plus 2 is 9. So that's our 980, and that's it. So how many trains were not late? 980. Okay, let's have a look at our next question, question number 24. So question number 24 says 96 adults and 260 children visited a new museum. A sixth of the adults and 3/20 of the children are surveyed as they leave. Work out the total number of people surveyed. So in this question, what we need to do is work out how many adults were surveyed, work out how many children were surveyed, and then add them together, and that's the total number of people surveyed. So let's start off with the adults. So adults. So a sixth of the adults are surveyed, so we need to work out a sixth of 96. And if we work out a sixth of 96, that'll tell us how many adults were surveyed. And to find a sixth of a number, we just divide by 6, and it's a calculator question, so let's do 96 divided by 6, and that's equal to 96 divided by 6 is equal to 16. So that means that 16 adults were surveyed. Now in terms of the children, there's 260 children and 3/20ths of them were surveyed. So let's work out 3/20ths of 260. And if we work out 3/20ths of 260, that tells us how many children are surveyed. So to work out 3/20ths of a number, we divide by 20 and then multiply by 3. So let's take our 260 and divide by 20. That's equal to 13. And then let's multiply by 3. So 13 multiplied by 3 is equal to 39. So that means that 39 children are surveyed. So we know that 16 adults are surveyed and 39 children are surveyed. And the question says to work out the total number of people surveyed. So let's do 16 plus 39, and that's equal to 55. So 55 people were surveyed, and that's it. Okay, let's have a look at our next question, question number 25, and it's a non-calculator question. And the question says, a large coffee costs £3.20 and a medium coffee costs 3/4 of the price of a large coffee. Work out the total cost of 5 large coffees and 2 medium coffees. Okay, so in this question, I'm going to start off by finding the cost of a medium coffee because it's 3/4 of the price of a large coffee. So if we work out 3/4 of £3.20, that's the price of the medium coffee, and then we can just work out the total price. So let's start off by working out 3/4 of £3.20. So to work out 3/4 of a number, we divide by 4 and then multiply by 3. So let's take our 320 or £3.20. I'm going to change that into pence, 320 pence, and I'm going to divide it by 4. So 320 divided by 4. So how many 4s go into 3? 0, remainder 3. How many 4s go into 32? That's 8. 8 times 4 is 32. And how many 4s go into 0? That's 0. So a quarter of £3.20 is 80p. Now we need to multiply by 3. So we're going to do 80 multiplied by 3. Now 8 times 3 is 24, so 80 times 3 would be 240 pence, and that's equal to £2.40. So that means the cost of the medium coffee is £2.40. Now the question asks us to work out the total cost of 5 large coffees, they cost £3.20 each, and 2 medium coffees, they cost £2.40 each. So let's work out the cost of those. So let's start off with the 5 large coffees. So let's take our £3.20, so £3.20 or 320 pence, and let's multiply that by 5. So 5 times 0 is 0. 5 times 2 is 10, so let's put our 0 down and carry our 1. And 5 times 3 is 15, plus 1 is 16. So that means that 5 large coffees cost £16. So that's the cost of the 5 large coffees. Now let's find the cost of the 2 medium coffees. So they cost £2.40 each, and we're going to multiply that by 2. Well, it's going to be £4.80, just doubling it. 2 times 0 is 0, 2 times 4 is 8, and 2 times 2 is 4. So 2 medium coffees cost £4.80. So 2 medium coffees cost £4.80. So now to work out the total cost, we just need to add those two together. So we need to just do £16 plus £4.80, and £16 plus £4.80, well, 16 plus 4 is 20, so it's going to be £20 and 80 pence. So the total cost would be £20 and 80 pence, and that's it. Okay, let's have a look at our next question, question number 26. So question number 26 says the size of a packet of pasta is increased by a quarter, and then the new size is then later reduced by a quarter. And is the new packet smaller, the same size, or larger than the original packet of pasta? And we've been asked to explain how you've worked out your answer. Let the original packet of pasta have a certain size or certain mass, and I'm going to let it be 100 grams. I'm going to just pretend that the original packet of pasta was 100 grams, and then I'm going to increase it by a quarter, get how much that new packet was, and then I'm going to reduce it by a quarter to see how heavy or the mass of the final packet of pasta, and then I can compare it to the 100 grams to see if it's smaller, the same size, or larger. So let's start off with the 100 grams to begin with. It's increased by a quarter, so let's increase this by a quarter. So a quarter of 100 grams, well, let's divide it by 4 to find a quarter. To find a quarter is something we divide by 4. That's 25 grams. So it's increased by a quarter. That means it's increased by 25 grams. So it means that after it's been increased by a quarter, it would be 100 plus 25, and that's equal to 125 grams. So that's how heavy that packet of pasta would have been. But then that new size is later reduced by a quarter. So let's reduce this by a quarter. So let's work out a quarter of this number and then take it away. So let's take our 125 and divide it by 4. And it's a calculator question, so we can take our 125 and divide by 4. And that's equal to 31.25 grams, and it's reduced by that amount. So let's take our 125 and take away 31.25 grams, and that's equal to 93.75 grams. So that's actually smaller than the original packet of pasta. And that's it. So that new packet is actually smaller than the original packet of pasta. So if we increase something by a quarter and then decrease it by a quarter, it's smaller than the original amount. And you can change that. You could do 200 grams or 1,000 grams or 50 grams, and you'll always find that it's going to be smaller. So the answer is it's smaller. And that's it. Okay, let's have a look at our next question, question number 27. So question number 27 says a quarter of 72 equals 2/3 of blank, and we've been asked to fill in this missing number. So let's start off by working out a quarter of 72. So let's take our 72, and to find a quarter of something, we divide by 4. And to divide by 4, we can half it and half it again. Half of 72 is 36, and half of that is 18. So that's fantastic. We know this side is equal to 18, and that's equal to 2/3 of a certain number. Now we could use trial and error and say, well, what's 2/3 of 30? And 2/3 of 30, well, 30 divided by 3 would be 10, and times by 2 would be 20. Well, that's too high. Well, let's go a bit lower, and so on. And we could try and figure out the number that whenever we work out 2/3 of it, that we get 18. But there's a better way. Normally, whenever we work out a fraction of a number, we divide by the bottom and times by the top. But if we know what the answer is and we're trying to find out what that original number is, rather than dividing by the bottom and times by the top, let's divide by the top and times by the bottom. So we know that 2/3 of this number is equal to 18. So let's divide it by the top. So let's take 18 and divide it by 2. And 18 divided by 2 is 9. And then let's times by the bottom. So 9 times 3 is equal to 27. So that means that 2/3 of 27 is 18. And let's just check it. 27, let's work out 2/3 of it. So let's divide by the bottom and times by the top as normal. 27 divided by 3 is 9. And then times by 2 is 18. And that's it. So the missing number was 27. Now this question used a topic called finding the original. And there's a video on Corbettmaths. If you go to Corbettmaths and fractions and scroll down to find an original, there's a video tutorial there which goes through that topic, and also a dedicated practice question booklet on that topic as well, so you can do lots more of these questions if you want to. Okay, let's have a look at our next question, question number 28. So question number 28 says, when a bouncy ball is dropped, it will rise to 4/5 of the height it was dropped from. So for instance, if this is the bouncy ball and it's dropped, it'll bounce and then it'll rise to 4/5 of that height, and then it'll fall and then bounce again and rise to 4/5 of that height, and so on. And the question says, the ball's dropped from a height of 5 meters and is allowed to bounce repeatedly. So it's just going to bounce, 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 and so on. Which is the least number of bounces until the rebound height is less than 2 meters. So in other words, we want to find out how many bounces until it rises to less than 2 meters. So let's start off with our working out 4/5 of 5 meters, because after it drops the first time, it rises to 4/5 of that height. So if we work out 4/5 of 5, that'll tell us how high it rises to after the first bounce. So if we work out 4/5 of 5, this is a calculator question, but this one's quite nice. 5 divided by 5 is 1, times by 4 is 4. So after the first bounce, it'll rise to a height of 4 meters. That's after the first bounce. So that's the first rebound height. Okay, next, it then falls from 4 meters and then bounces again. So if we work out 4/5 of 4 meters, we can find out how high the bouncy ball rises to after the second bounce. So let's work out 4/5 of 4. So 4/5 of 4. And it's a calculator question, so let's take our 4 and divide it by the bottom. So divide by 5, that's equal to 0.8. And then times by the top, that's equal to 3.2. So after the second bounce, it'll rise to 3.2 meters. That's the second rebound height, height, or after 2 bounces. Okay, next, the ball then falls from 3.2 meters and then bounces to 4/5 of that height. So let's work out 4/5 of 3.2 meters. So 4/5 of 3.2 meters and see what that is equal to. So we'll divide by the bottom and times by the top. So 3.2 divided by 5, that's equal to 0.64, and then multiply by the top, that's equal to 2.56 meters. That's the third rebound height, or after 3 bounces. So just to recap, it's been dropped from 5 meters, it bounces and rises to 4 meters, it falls again and bounces to 3.2 meters, it falls again and bounces to 2.56 meters. We want to carry on until it's less than 2 meters, so let's carry on. So now let's work out 4/5 of 2.56 meters, so 4/5 of 2.56 meters. Hopefully this is going to be less than 2 meters, so we'll divide by the bottom, so divide by 5, that's equal to 0.512, and multiply by 4 is equal to 2.048 meters. So the fourth rebound height is still above 2 meters, so it is, the fourth rebound height is equal to 2.048 meters. Now let's work out 4/5 of that to see how high it rises after the fifth bounce. So 4/5 of 2.048 meters and see what we get. So dividing by 5 gives us 0.4 1.4096 multiplied by the top is equal to 1.6384 meters. So that's below 2 meters. So the fifth rebound height is below 2 meters. And let's just go up and read the question, make sure we're answering this correctly. So the question says, which is the least number of bounces until the rebound height is less than 2 meters? So it's been dropped from 5 meters. After one bounce, it rises to 4 meters. After 2 bounces, it rises to 3.2 meters. After 3 bounces, it rises to 2.56 meters. After 4 bounces, it rises to 2.048 meters. And after 5 bounces, it rises to a height which is less than 2 meters, which is 1.6384 meters. So the answer is 5. That's the least number of bounces needed for it to have a rebound height of less than 2 meters, so 5 bounces. Okay, let's have a look at our next question, question number 29. So question number 29 says there are 2 parties to vote for in a local election, the Purple Party or the Red Party. 21,840 people voted in total for the 2 parties, and because they're the only 2 parties to vote for, that means that 21,840 people voted in total for those parties. 5/8 of the people who voted were over 50. 2/3 of the people that are over 50 voted for the Red Party, and 9/10 of the people aged 50 or under voted for the Purple Party. Part A says which party received the most votes. Okay, so we need to work out which party received the most votes. So let's have a look at this information. We're told that there's 21,840 people and that 5/8 of them are over 50. So let's work out how many people are over 50 and how many people are under 50 to begin with, or 50 and under to begin with. So let's work out 5/8 of 21,840. So let's take our 21,840 and let's divide that by, we want to work out 5/8 of it, so let's divide it by 8 to begin with. And that's equal to 2,730. That's an eighth. We want 5/8. So let's take our 2,730 and let's multiply that by 5. So multiplying that by 5 gives us 13,650. So that means there's 13,650 people that are over 50. In terms of the 50 or under, that'll be the rest. So that would be 21,840 subtract 13,650, and that's equal to 8,190. Okay, so we've now worked out how many people are over 50 and how many people are 50 or under. Now, in terms of the rest of this question, I've realized there's quite a lot of information here. We're now going to need to work out 2/3 of the number of people over 50, and that's how many voted for the Red Party. Take that away from the number of people over 50, see how many people voted for the Purple Party, and then we're going to need to look at 9/10 of the people who are 50 and under and work that out to work out how many 50 or unders voted for the Purple Party. Then take that away from the number of people 50 or under to see how many of those people voted for the Red Party, and so on. So what I've actually done is I've drawn a 2-way table, and I've drawn this 2-way table, and in this 2-way table we've got the Red Party, the Purple Party, and the total, and we've got 50 or under, over 50, and total. And I've just drawn this 2-way table just to organize this information. So let's fill it in with the numbers that we know so far. So we know that there's 13,650 people that are over 50. So that is 13,650 people that are over 50. And then in terms of the 50 or under, that's 8,190. Now let's work out, we're told this bit of information, 2/3 of the people aged over 50 voted for the Red Party. So let's work out 2/3 of 13,650 to see how many of those voted for the Red Party. So let's take our 13,650 and we want to work out 2/3 of it, so let's divide by the bottom and times by the top. So we're going to divide it by 3 to begin with. So 13,650 divided by 3 is equal to 4,550, and then we're going to multiply by the top, so 4,550 multiplied by 2 is equal to 9,100. So that means that 9,100 people who are over 50 voted for the Red Party. So for the Red Party, over 50 would be 9,100. So we now know that 9,100 people who are aged over 50 voted for the Red Party. That means the rest must have voted for the Purple Party. So if we take our 13,650 and take away the 9,100, that's equal to how many people aged over 50 voted for the Purple Party. So 13,650 take away 9,100 is equal to 4,550. So that means that 4,550 people aged over 50 voted for the Purple Party. Now let's look at our last bit of information. We're told that 9/10 of the people aged 50 or under voted for the Purple Party. So if we work out 9/10 of how many people are 50 or under, and that's 8,190, that tells how many of those voted for the Purple Party. So let's do that. So let's take our 8,190 and divide by the bottom, which is 10. That's equal to 819. And then multiply that by the top, which is 9. So 819 multiplied by 9 is equal to 7,371. So out of the 8,190 people who are aged 50 or under, 7,371 voted for the Purple Party. That's quite a lot, 7,371. And that means the rest of them must have voted for the Red Party. So if we do 8,190 take away 7,371, that's equal to 819. So that means that 819 people who are aged 50 or under voted for the Red Party. And that's it. So we've filled in our two-way table, or we've filled in those rows of our two-way tables. We've then just got the totals. With the total number of people, we were told that already, but if we add these two numbers together, 8190 plus 13650, that's equal to 21,840. That's what we're told in the question. Fantastic. And if we add up these two numbers, we'll find out how many people voted for the Red Party. And if we add up these two numbers, we'll see how many people voted for the Purple Party. And we'll be able to then answer part A, who received the most votes. So 9,100 plus 819 would be equal to 9,919. That's how many people voted for the Red Party. And in terms of the Purple Party, you can see that's going to be more already. 7,371 plus 4,550 is equal to 11,921. So which party received the most votes? That's the Purple Party. So let's write that down. The Purple Party. And as you can see, that was a 5-mark question because it took us quite a bit of time to work it out. There's a lot of information there. And part B says, how many votes did they win by? Well, that's how many more votes in the Red Party they got. So if we do our 11,921, subtract 9,919, that'll tell us how many they won by. So 11,921 subtract 9,919, and that's equal to 2,002. So they won by 2,002 votes. So let's write that down, 2,002. And that's it. And that's it. So these have been the video solutions to the fractions of amounts practice questions. I really hope you found this video useful. If you need any extra help on this topic, if you go to corbettmaths.com/contents and scroll down to video number 137, there's a dedicated video tutorial there on finding the fractions of amounts. Also near that, you'll also find that finding the original video as well, which was useful for one of the questions as well. Alternatively, you could scan this QR code. But in this video, we're focusing on the video solutions to the fractions of amounts practice questions. So I hope you found this video useful. And if you have found it useful, please like it and please subscribe to the YouTube channel. Thank you. Cheers. Bye.